How to become hard to manipulate. Most people think manipulation is obvious. They imagine a liar, a controlling partner, a dishonest boss, a person openly trying to use them. But manipulation is rarely that clear. Often, it feels like pressure. A feeling that you have to respond immediately. A feeling that you are selfish for saying no. A feeling that you need to explain yourself. A feeling that someone else's mood has become your responsibility. And before you realize it, you are doing things you did not truly choose. You agree when you want to refuse. You apologize when you did nothing wrong. You over-explain simple decisions. You stay quiet to avoid conflict. You let other people's expectations determine your actions. And then you wonder why you feel drained, why you feel resentful, why your life does not feel fully your own. Welcome to 10-Minute Books, the channel where we break down the world's most powerful books into practical lessons you can apply in everyday life. Today, we explore a powerful idea through 3 major books by Robert Greene: The Laws of Human Nature, The 48 Laws of Power, and The 50th Law. Together, these books reveal a difficult truth. People can only manipulate the weaknesses they are able to find. Your fear, your insecurity, your need for approval, your guilt, your impatience, your desire to be liked. The goal is not to become cold. It is not to distrust everyone, and it is not to turn every relationship into a power game. The goal is to become more conscious, because the more clearly you understand your own emotional patterns, the harder you become to control. The first principle is understanding how manipulation works. Manipulation does not always begin with a lie. Sometimes it begins with urgency. You need to decide now. You need to answer now. You need to prove your loyalty now. Sometimes it begins with guilt. After everything I have done for you, you are really going to say no. Sometimes it begins with flattery. You are the only person I can trust. You are better than everyone else. Sometimes it begins with confusion. Maybe you misunderstood. Maybe you are overreacting. Maybe you are the problem. The method changes, but the goal is the same: to move you emotionally before you have time to think clearly. Robert Greene's work repeatedly shows that people are most vulnerable when they are reactive. When fear takes over, when anger takes over, when guilt takes over, when the need to be accepted takes over. The person who can control your emotional state can often influence your decisions. That is why the first defense is not aggression. It is awareness. The second principle is to slow down. Manipulation depends on speed. The manipulative person often wants your answer while emotion is high, while you feel guilty, while you feel confused, while you fear disappointing them. But urgency is not always an emergency. When someone pressures you for an immediate answer, pause. You can say, "I need time to think about that. I will get back to you. I am not ready to decide right now. Let me consider it first." These sentences are simple, but they are powerful. They interrupt emotional momentum. They create a gap between pressure and response. And inside that gap, you regain choice. The third principle is knowing your emotional trigger. Every person has a weakness they are especially sensitive to. Some people cannot tolerate rejection. Some cannot tolerate criticism. Some cannot tolerate conflict. Some cannot tolerate disappointing others. These vulnerabilities are normal, but when they remain hidden, they become easy to use against you. A person who fears rejection may agree to things they do not want. A person who fears criticism may work endlessly to prove their value. A person who fears conflict may stay silent when boundaries are crossed. A person who needs approval may let praise and disappointment control their behavior. The question is not whether you have emotional triggers. Everyone does. The question is whether you know them. Because once you see the pattern, you can start separating the feeling from the action. You can feel guilty without automatically being guilty. You can feel anxious without saying yes. You can feel criticized without defending yourself immediately. This is emotional self-control, not the absence of emotion. The ability to feel emotion without letting it decide for you. The fourth principle is learning to recognize guilt as a tool. Guilt can be healthy when it points to real responsibility. But unhealthy guilt makes you responsible for emotions that are not yours to manage. Someone is disappointed, so you feel you must fix it. Someone is angry, so you feel you must surrender. Someone withdraws affection, so you feel you must earn it back. Someone says you are selfish, so you doubt a reasonable boundary. This is where many people become easy to manipulate. They confuse kindness with self-abandonment. But kindness does not mean saying yes to everything. Compassion does not mean carrying another person's emotional life on your back. And setting a boundary is not cruelty. A healthy relationship allows you to say no without making you feel like a bad person. The fifth principle is separating facts from emotional pressure. Manipulation works by making you feel something intensely, but feelings are not always evidence. Someone may act disappointed. That does not automatically mean you failed them. Someone may become angry. That does not automatically mean you are wrong. Someone may accuse you. That does not automatically mean you are guilty. Robert Greene emphasizes the importance of seeing reality clearly. So, ask simple questions. What actually happened? What was said? What was agreed to? What am I responsible for? What belongs to the other person? What am I assuming because I feel pressure? These questions bring you back to reality. And reality is harder to manipulate than emotion. The sixth principle is refusing to over-explain. Many people over-explain because they want to be understood. They want to avoid seeming rude. They want to prove their intentions are good. But over-explaining often weakens your position. The more reasons you give, the more openings you create for someone to argue. You say no, then you give 5 explanations. They challenge each one, and suddenly your decision becomes a debate. Sometimes a complete sentence is enough. I cannot do that. That does not work for me. I have decided not to. I am not available. You do not need a courtroom argument for every boundary. You do not need unanimous approval for every choice. Simple clarity is often stronger than endless explanation. The seventh principle is becoming comfortable with disappointment. Someone will dislike your boundary. Someone will be disappointed by your decision. Someone will think you have changed. Someone may even try to make you feel guilty for becoming more independent. But another person's disappointment does not automatically mean you made the wrong choice. You cannot build a free life if you need everyone to approve of it. The 50th law is deeply concerned with freedom from fear, and one of the most common fears is social rejection. We want to belong. We want to be accepted. We want to avoid standing alone. But when approval becomes more important than truth, you become easy to manage. You begin shaping yourself around other people's moods. Real confidence is not making everyone happy. It is surviving the fact that not everyone will be happy with you. The 8th principle is watching patterns instead of promises. People can say almost anything. They can say they respect you. They can say they care. They can say they will change. They can say they understand. But Greene would tell you to observe behavior over time. What happens when you say no? What happens when you disagree? What happens when you have a need? What happens when you stop making yourself convenient? These moments reveal more than charming words ever can. A healthy person may feel disappointed, but they still respect your boundary. A manipulative person may punish you for it. They may withdraw, mock you, create drama, question your loyalty, or make you feel cruel for protecting yourself. Patterns matter, because manipulation is rarely one sentence. It is a repeated system. The 9th principle is learning not to react to provocation. Some people use provocation to control you. They insult you, question your character, accuse you unfairly, say something designed to trigger anger or panic. And once you react, the focus moves away from their behavior. Now you are defending your reaction. This is why composure is powerful. You do not need to become emotionless. You need to become less predictable. You can pause. You can ask what they mean. You can say, "I am willing to discuss this when we can speak calmly. I do not want to continue this conversation in this way. I am not going to make a decision under pressure." These responses remove oxygen from drama. The person trying to control you through chaos loses influence when you refuse to become chaotic too. The 10th principle is building an inner source of validation. The need for approval is one of the strongest openings for manipulation. When your sense of worth depends on praise, anyone who gives or withholds praise can control you. You work harder for people who barely acknowledge you. You tolerate disrespect because you want to earn back affection. You abandon your values because you want to stay included. Inner validation does not mean believing you are always right. It means having a stable relationship with your own values. You know what you stand for. You know what behavior you will accept. You know what you are trying to build. You know that criticism can be useful without becoming your identity. The more you develop this inner foundation, the less desperate you become for emotional permission. The 11th principle is keeping your life private enough to protect it. You do not need to reveal every plan, every insecurity, every conflict, every goal, every weakness. The 48 laws of power repeatedly warns against revealing too much too quickly. This does not mean becoming secretive or dishonest. It means being selective. Not everyone has earned access to your inner world. Not every person needs to know what you are building. Not every criticism deserves a response. Privacy creates space. It gives you time to think without outside interference. It protects unfinished ideas. It prevents people from using your vulnerabilities as tools against you. The 12th principle is strengthening your ability to walk away. Manipulation becomes powerful when you feel trapped. When you believe you cannot leave, cannot disappoint, cannot lose the relationship, cannot lose the opportunity, cannot lose the approval. This is why independence matters. Emotional independence, social independence, practical independence. The more options you have, the less pressure you feel to accept what is unhealthy. You do not need to become detached from everyone. Human beings need relationships, but dependence becomes dangerous when it forces you to betray yourself in order to survive. Strength means developing enough stability that you can say, "This is not good for me. I can leave. I can survive disappointment. I can rebuild." The 13th principle is self-mastery. Ultimately, the person manipulating you is not always the biggest problem. Sometimes the deepest problem is the part of you that cannot tolerate discomfort, the part that must be liked, the part that cannot say no, the part that panics when someone is upset, the part that needs to fix every misunderstanding. Robert Greene's work points back to this again and again. Power begins with self-control, not control over everyone else. Control over your own reactions. When you can pause before responding, you become harder to rush. When you can tolerate disapproval, you become harder to guilt. When you can see your insecurities, you become harder to flatter. When you can accept uncertainty, you become harder to pressure. This is what it means to become hard to manipulate. Not invulnerable, not emotionless, not suspicious of every person, but awake. You know your patterns. You know your values. You know where pressure is being applied. And you give yourself enough time to choose. So, what does this look like in daily life? It looks like taking time before important decisions. It looks like saying no without inventing a long excuse. It looks like noticing when guilt is being used to move you. It looks like refusing to argue with someone committed to misunderstanding you. It looks like watching behavior instead of trusting promises too quickly. It looks like accepting that some people will dislike your boundaries. It looks like becoming more loyal to reality than to the image other people want you to protect. And perhaps the deepest lesson is this: manipulation becomes powerful when you abandon yourself, when you ignore your own discomfort, when you betray your own judgment, when you let fear make decisions. But every time you pause, observe, and choose consciously, you come back to yourself. You become less available to pressure, less controlled by guilt, less ruled by approval, less frightened of being misunderstood. The question then becomes, what emotion makes you easiest to manipulate? Fear, guilt, loneliness, the need to be liked, the need to be right. Because the moment you understand that weakness, you stop giving it away so easily. That was How to Become Hard to Manipulate, explored through the laws of human nature, the 48 laws of power, and the 50th law by Robert Greene. Which idea resonated most with you? Slowing down, setting boundaries, or becoming less dependent on approval? Let us know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to like, subscribe to 10-Minute Books, and turn on notifications so you never miss our next deep dive into powerful ideas. Because real strength is not controlling everyone around you. It is refusing to let other people control the parts of you that you have never understood.